Good morning and welcome to Talk It Out Tuesday as we answer your questions on this day each week. Some are pre submitted, and sometimes you guys add one as we go. So just want to let you know that if you want to send a question, you can do so at aaron@fbccrowley.org. That will come into me. That's my email, and you can send your questions in as some of you have done. Or if you have either a follower of mine on Facebook, then you can do that through messaging me on Facebook as well. But anyway, today I want to answer a question that was submitted, and it deals with 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. Now, I want to just read the verse, and I want to then we're going to deal with it, okay? So 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15 says, "But she will be saved through childbearing if she continues in faith, love, and holiness with good judgment." Now, this is a complicated verse. What does it mean? She will be saved through childbearing. And this was the specific question that was asked. If I could define this, explain this, and it is a complicated verse because if we just read it straight, and we don't, and again, here's the problem with Bible interpretations, Bible studies. We have to make sure that we take several things into consideration every time we take a particular verse, because in this particular case, if you just read those words, she'll be saved through childbearing, you could walk away with an understanding. So if a woman has a child, she goes to heaven. And that's not the interpretation. That is not the truth. We see, and this is where we have to be careful, because we need to make sure that the interpretation that we develop from one verse is also supported and confirmed with the rest of Scripture. If I develop a particular belief or doctrine, or what they might say is called a theology, from one verse, but it is contradicted in other places in Scripture, then my interpretation is wrong. And so we have to take this and begin to express it and look at it from the rest of Scripture. So she'll be saved through childbearing. Does that mean that a woman who has a child goes to heaven? The converse of that would be, does a woman who does not have a child go to hell? And see that there lies the complication, right? In the one sense, it sounds great if we say, hey, if you have a child, you go to heaven. So if you don't have a child, you go to hell? And so when we begin to logically unpack this, logically, that doesn't make sense either, right? Okay, but if we look at the rest of Scripture, we also know that we are saved by grace through faith. That is also the writing of Paul. Now, Paul wrote this letter to Timothy as he was a young pastor, going to be dealing with a lot of things. And he is expressing, these are also the final writings that he has, and he's writing as he mentors Timothy. But Paul himself also says that, okay, look, you're saved by grace, Ephesians 2. You're saved by grace through faith, not of yourself, not anything you can do. So we already can write off the understanding that some may have. A woman is saved. Now, what does saved mean? We have to understand our words that we use. When we use the word saved in church life, we typically mean someone who has recognized their sin, been washed of their sin by their faith in what Jesus did on the cross. He was buried. He rose again on the third day. We believe that that is the activity that provided the opportunity for salvation to happen. You are saved from a destiny in hell to have a hope in heaven. Childbearing is not what does that. Placing your faith and trust in the activity of Jesus is what provides that opportunity. Childbearing alone does not do that. So we cannot then assume that simply by having a child, a woman is saved. So what is Paul getting at here? Doesn't mean that she will be physically saved through childbearing. Is this something that we look at? Well, not everybody lived through Rachel died through childbirth. Other women have died through childbirth. So we cannot then take an assumption that Paul is talking about, Christian women who have children will be physically saved. That's not true. Women die. It's not as common as it once was, but it happens. So we can't look at it from that perspective either. This is not talking about a spiritual saving. This is not talking about a physical saving. What is this talking about? Well, okay, we need to look at the context in which this verse is planted. The verses surrounding it, in verses 8 through 15, Paul is giving some instructions to both men and women. This is how we should all act. This is the role that each of us have. And this is a complicated thing in today's culture. In the culture in which Paul wrote, there was definite differences in men and women. I'm not saying that they were all appropriate. I'm not saying that everything was wonderfully good. Women have suffered for years under male domination, and we understand today, and I believe Jesus also talked about this and led in this movement, that that's not what is supposed to happen. But it did. And so we then need to understand men and women have different roles that we are to be playing in life, in church, in family. We do different things. Now just think about that for a minute. We have different roles. We have different parts to play. Some are more traditionally developed than others. Generations older than me would not find women mowing the yard. Men, that was a man's job. Now listen, it's not that you can't. It's just, it was an understood situation for many years that certain chores around the house were things a man should do, and certain chores around the house were things that a woman should do. Not that they have to do that, but it's just, this was a commonly accepted situation. In our own home, Dulcie and I have split up the jobs. I tend to do the things outside. She tends to do the things inside. And even inside, there's a lot to do. And we developed a system, of egalitarian system, that we split up the different things that we do. And we've developed that. Today's younger culture has an even different view of these things. Feminism and all of its wonders and all of its good things that it's supplied strength and courage and wisdom and opportunity for women, has a negative connotation at times that begins to try to go against any of these things. Hey, anything a man can do, a woman can do better. That's how the song goes. But here's that's from the 50s and 60s. But there are things that we can't do. There are certain things, there's certain roles to play. And we can talk about the biblical time as being male chauvinistic. You've heard some people talk about how God is just a male chauvinist pig because he wants to put the woman down. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you read Jesus, he elevates women. He elevates their role. He elevates them. But the reality is, biologically, there are some things that we as men can't do, women can do. So what is Paul getting at? Well, he's talking about the different roles that we need to be playing and the different things that we should be involved in that are culturally sensitive. What I believe he's talking about here in verse 15, and it's unfortunate. I mentioned this in a message recently. It's unfortunate sometimes the words that we use, but we have to take it in context. Yes, it says saved. That is the word sozo. That usually means something divine and something spiritual. But it does not mean the removal of sins, the forgiveness of sins. It doesn't mean grace extended in a spiritual salvation sense, because we can't do that. Jesus did that. So if it doesn't mean that, what does it mean? And this word childbearing, there is a root in that has to do with the final things. It has to do with the passing on of things. It has to do with terminal kinds of things. What I think Paul is trying to address here is a sense of fulfillment and a sense of true fulfillment. That, look, at that time, in that context, a woman is going to find her fulfillment in going through the roles that is designed for each of the genders, specifically at the time. Now, I'm not going to be one who stands here and says, okay, a woman needs to be barefoot and pregnant, and that's the only way she can find true fulfillment. That's not true. I don't believe that. I don't believe the Bible supports that. What I think Paul is getting at in a larger sense is that we each have a role to play. Each have a role to play in church. What is your role? You're going to find fulfillment when you're doing the things that God created you to do. You're going to find fulfillment in those moments when we recognize how God created each of us, how God has wired each of us, both physically, psychologically, and spiritually. How has God wired you? How has God prepared you? What work has God called you to do? And in that, you're going to find a sense of fulfillment. You're going to have this sense of being saved from a horrible reality to a better reality. Now, again, I don't know that this always speaks from a happiness perspective. It speaks from a joy and a fulfillment perspective, which doesn't have to make sense to the larger context of the world, but it does have to make sense in the larger context of Scripture. So I think Paul's talking about the different roles, the different genders, and in the whole context. And in that, he is expressing how each need to be moving forward in doing what it is that God has wired us to do, what he's called us to do. In that, you're going to find a sense of fulfillment. At the time, in the culture, when this was written, women did not have the elevated role and the elevated sense that we have today. And this was one of the greatest accomplishments and achievements that a woman could do, would be to raise a child and to honor God, to raise a child to honor God. And I think that, I don't know that that's wrong today. I think that we need to realize that men and women need to come together to raise a child. I mean, Deuteronomy 6 develops this idea that the family really should be the main way that a child is discipled and grown up in Jesus. And so that shifts the church's responsibility away from making, we have to teach the children. I think that honestly, to be biblical, we need to teach the parents how to teach the children. And when we do that, we are honoring Scripture in a greater way. But if we continue to just purport this idea that, hey, parents, just drop your kids off and we're going to get them where they need to be, is not appropriate. It's not biblical. And it's really not practical. I mean, you have them, we might have them 2 hours a week. A parent is involved in their life many, many, many more hours a week. So maybe we should be reworking our emphasis and work on, let's get the parents trained and get the parents the help, the resources, the support they need in order for them to raise their children in the way of Christ. I think it's very important that we review that and that we understand that. So that's in answer to the question that was submitted. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you have other questions, go ahead and submit those and present those. And let me know, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you have. Good morning to everyone that is joining us, and thank you for being with me today as we answered a question out of 1 Timothy 2:15. You can send your questions to the email listed on the screen if you would like to. I will get those, and I will make sure that we answer those next time on Talk It Out Tuesday. So without seeing any other questions coming in, and I don't see that. So, hey, you guys have a great day. Don't forget to go and reserve your spot for worship. We have 9 o'clock and 11:15. Now, what's the difference? 9 o'clock is a little more traditionally blended. 11:15 is a little more contemporary blended. But I've posted a link there in the comments section. You can click on that and it'll let you reserve your spot for either of the services. Pick the one that you would like to attend. And we'll look forward to seeing you this weekend as we talk about the internal dissonance. Have you ever felt out of rhythm internally? I mean, maybe mentally, psychologically, emotionally. We just sometimes are out of balance. We're out of rhythm. And so it creates this disharmony, this dissonance that just can fatigue each of us. We're going to talk about how to get through that, how to get over that, and how we can restore harmony, balance, and joy inside. Because what we see outside typically is a byproduct of what's going on inside. Look forward to seeing you this weekend. You guys have a great rest of the week. We'll be back tomorrow with another Daily Dose. Have a great day. Bless you.